Topping today's news, more school violence. The Deputy Prime Minister takes a delegation to the Middle East, and the Lyndon Pindling International Airport conducts a mandatory emergency exercise. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Dorino Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. Thanks for joining us. There continues to be a growing concern about violence in some of our schools as police confirm another stabbing incident that took place on Monday between two male students of the A.F. Adley Junior High School. Police Press Liaison Superintendent Wali telling JCN that the two students involved in the incident, they were taken to the hospital, and after they were treated for their injuries, he said that both students were later taken into custody for questioning. Superintendent Peters says if their investigation reveals that either or both of the students are at fault, they will be charged. He was pleased to note that the parents of both students were involved in trying to resolve the matter. Meanwhile, appearing on a local radio talk show on Tuesday morning, President of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, Belinda Wilson, said police intelligence suggests that much of the school violence stems from the wider community, as it is gang-related. She went as far as to say there are also primary school students involved in gangs. Ms. Wilson called for a stronger and more sustained police presence in schools. Meanwhile, Superintendent Peters explained to JCN that the Royal Bahamas Police Force recently spent 3 days at the A.F. Adley School along with inmates from the Bahamas Department of Corrections, teaching the students how to resolve conflict without resorting to violence. National Security Minister Wayne Munro updating the media on the death of released convict sex offender 55-year-old Alden Scott, who was found on a dirt road in Yellowelder just west of the Blue Hill Road only days after being released from the Bahamas Department of Corrections. On Friday, May 20th, the National Security Minister made an announcement that Scott would be released as part of the Sex Offenders Registry Initiative. On Saturday, May 21st, according to Superintendent Audley Peters, it came to the police attention that Scott was found suffering from injuries about the body and was unresponsive. Days later, on Wednesday, May 25th, Superintendent Peters confirmed that Scott had died in hospital of those injuries. Minister Munro says at this time he is still awaiting a briefing from the police, adding that it's an urgent, outstanding matter for him.
Well, all sudden deaths are considered suspicious until they can be classified one way or the other, whether it's a suspected crime or not. I have to wait to hear a briefing on the cause of death. I haven't been briefed on that yet, and the attending circumstances.
Scott was sentenced to 2 years at the Bahamas Department of Corrections in 2021 for a sexual offense against a 9-year-old girl. Prior to this, in 2014, he was imprisoned for raping a 17-year-old girl and was released in 2020. In announcing his release, Minister Munro noted that Scott was deemed a risk of significant harm to the health and safety of the public. He further noted that a physical retaliation against Mr. Scott would only be detrimental to the progress being made with the establishment of the Sex Offenders Registry. When questioned on the ramifications of Scott's death on public notification, if the death is found to be connected to the announcement of the release, the minister had this to say.
We've never, to my knowledge, and none has been brought to my attention, had the case of a killing of somebody generally released for offenses. If we find that there's evidence that there is targeting, then that would be weighed in the balance as to how we balance the risk to the public safety and the risk to the individual. There are steps. The first step is the cause of death, the circumstances surrounding the death. So let us say that it is a natural causes, accidental, something like that. Then that doesn't tip the scale against public notification. If we find that it's in a conflict initiated by the person released, then again that doesn't tip the scales against public notification. If we find that it happened in circumstances, it's abundantly clear that you have vigilantes who will hunt down and kill persons of which there's public notification. All of the jurisprudence shows that that militates harshly against public notification, and we would have to see what other steps can be taken.
The minister also shared his preference to dealing with those considered dangerous, stating that he would like to track an individual at all times and for them to be aware of officials knowing their location. He contends that after this incident, officials will now have to look into other alternatives that may be taken to protect the public. From the courts today, former Senator Trevor Wali was formally charged with indecent assault at his arraignment before Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt. It is a charge to which the former senator denied. It is alleged that he made an inappropriate advance, or he made inappropriate advances on a 12-year-old child. Bail was granted at $4,000 with one surety. Mr. Wali was represented by attorney Devard Francis and is to have no contact with the child. A fixed date for the trial starts December 16th. Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper is currently heading a Bahamas delegation to the Middle East with several high-level meetings planned to further the interest of the Bahamas to build and strengthen ties with Qatar. The purpose of the mission is to engage in matters of mutual interest and cooperation in aviation, investments, tourism, transport, and financial services. On Monday, Mr. Cooper met with the Prime Minister of Qatar, Sheikh Khalid bin Khalifa bin Abdul Aziz Al Thani, who thanked the government of the Bahamas for accepting the country's invitation to discuss areas of mutual benefit. They reviewed bilateral relations and ways to deepen them, including air transport and tourism investments. They also had productive discussions about the potential for public-private partnerships on airports, training, and technical assistance for Bahamas Air, and in the area of civil aviation and air traffic services. Mr. Cooper also attended meetings with the Qatari Minister of Transport and the CEO of Qatar's Airways. The Deputy Prime Minister is accompanied by the Minister of Economic Affairs, Michael Halkitis, Deputy Director General of Tourism and Acting Director of Aviation, Dr. Kenneth Romer, Acting Director of the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority, Alexander Ferguson, Director of Investments, Felicia Hanna, and Anthony Stewart, Director at the Ministry of Tourism, with focus on Europe and the Middle East. The delegation was expected to head to Saudi Arabia today. The Bahamas Trade Union Congress, the TUC President, Obi Ferguson, is calling for consultation between the government and the unions. As he says, the union is 8 months in since signing a memorandum of understanding with the Progressive Liberal Party leaders before coming into power. Mr. Ferguson says there are a number of promises that were made to the union leaders by the opposition party. However, the government is not living up to their agreements.
We agreed for there to be consultation with all the respective leaders in the labor movement. We agreed to that. And we will hold the government to that because that's critically important if we're going to move the movement forward. We need our respect for the trade union leaders. That's a must. If you agree to do something, you can't do it for whatever reason, you should consult the union in advance. I'll let them know we agreed on such and such a date, but due to circumstances, we have to agree to defer it for a later date. There must be mutual respect.
This on the heels of the Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper announcement that there will be major developments in Grand Bahama. The TUC president says any major announcements involving workers, the union should be a part of it, and this is per the agreement of the MOU. Mr. Ferguson says there were several attempts made by the unions to communicate with the Deputy Prime Minister, but all of those attempts were to no avail.
There's a major undertaking in Grand Bahama where he made an announcement and he didn't see fit to consult as we agreed. It's only a reminder to him that when we were down at Queen Elizabeth Sports Center, he was there and he asked us to speak.
1 year ago.
And he was allowed to speak. Now, we say, how could there be a major development where the unions are not a part of those discussions? They're not even present, not even invited to be there. That is not what we agree to.
Mr. Ferguson says not because they signed an agreement, it means they are not going to speak to issues, as they are prepared to hold the Deputy Prime Minister accountable for promises made prior to the elections, as it was their members that helped the government to gain power.
We will let him know that, we will do what we have to do. We can call him out. We are not happy with that. And we want the Bahamian public to understand. Not because we signed an agreement, it means that we are not going to speak to issues. So we signed for better, not for what we had. And so we want to let him know that. And we want to do it publicly because when he spoke to us and he asked us to speak, that was done publicly. Right. Okay. We did that. So now we help him to get there. He must speak to us, and we will hold him accountable.
The TUC is calling for the government to take action in holding up their end of the bargain as it relates to consultation on a number of industrial agreements that have not been completed and are not progressing in the manner as they should. Illegal activity taking place at the Dome project on Abaco could have possibly been going on for months, according to Disaster Reconstruction Authority, DRA Executive Chairman Alex Storr. He says there are teams currently investigating the situation with a joint task force involving several agencies, including the police. Storr says he is sure of a resolution, that it will come in proper time.
Can you confirm whether the domes are being used as brothels as well?
I have had reports of illegal activity along that line and other things going on, and so we're investigating all of that, and whatever happens, we'll make sure that we take the appropriate actions based in law. Human nature, unfortunately, it's bad and sometimes it's good. But let me just say that every aspect of this Dome project has had problems. And so that's why the government is working as quickly as possible to bring a close to it.
Storr says he is sure a resolution will arrive once a proper assessment is completed. He says he could not identify the possible culprits at this time, but recognizes the weakness of human nature.
The domes are not safe, and even if they're evacuated in case of a storm, their belongings inside those domes will not be safe. And so we're working to have a situation that won't create extra hardship on the residents, but would put them in a better circumstance.
There are unconfirmed reports that some of the domes were being used as brothels. It was also reported that some dome residents were renting the temporary housing structures for monetary gain when they should be free. Storr says currently teams are doing surveys identifying people occupying the domes and sorting them out from those who should be there from those that should not be residing in the domes. He added that the Prime Minister is working on a program to remove people from the domes considering the upcoming hurricane season. We'll take a break here and we'll be right back after these commercials.